Very pleased to have Nick Knight here with me, former England great as well as current broadcaster. How are you doing? I hope your family and you are safe and healthy, Nick.
Yes, no, we're all good, thanks. There's been a bit of an outbreak of COVID at the school where the two young kids are, but they're all fine, thankfully, and hopefully it's going to sort itself out soon. But yeah, great to be here in Mumbai, and I'm delighted. Thanks for calling me a great. I'm not so sure I go down as a great, but I'll take it from you. Thank you very much.
You're being modest. Yeah. Now you've had an interesting career as a player and a broadcaster with a successful run in ODI cricket, Nick. I mean, 100 games for England, carrying your bat through the England innings in Nottingham in 1996 against Pakistan. Any memories of that 125 not out, please?
Well, lots. How long have you got? Yeah, it was actually on the back of 100 I scored. I think, was it the day before or 2 days before? I mean, I can't quite remember.
Back-to-back hundreds. You're right.
Back-to-back hundreds. So of course, to get the 100 at Edgbaston before Trent Bridge, the one you're talking about, was a massive boost, really. I think it was my second game. I mean, I got hundreds in the second and third matches I played. So the implications of that are massive. Obviously, it makes you feel amazing about what you're trying to achieve. It makes you feel very welcome. It makes you feel like you belong. You're not scrapping around for that sort of big breakthrough moment that can sometimes take years. I was very lucky that it happened within a couple of games. So the impact of that was massive. It settled me down in international one-day cricket for quite some time. It gave me a bit of credit in the bank as well, which means that if you have that dreaded sort of period where you don't score, you've got a bit of a backing from the team and the management. And it was just really anything more than a self-belief. The fact that you can imagine you're growing up as a young kid thinking, am I ever going to play for England? I'd love to play for England. My ultimate dream is to play cricket for England. And then you finally get that chance. And when you do, I wasn't, I never saw myself as a great player. And I never had that huge self-confidence that I was just going to enter international cricket and score runs for fun. I never dreamt that would happen. And so to actually score runs in that second and third game, it gave me that, as I say, that huge self-belief. And it was just a dream, really.
Well, other than that 125 we just spoke about, there have been 4 other 100s in ODI cricket. You averaged over 40 runs, which is quite impressive by ODI standards. Would you pick out any of the others as standout ones, Nick?
It's difficult to pick them out because I scored 100 against my mate Glenn McGrath, who's in the next room over there. He that was at Sydney. That was a special moment. Scoring in the era that I played in, to score 100 against Australia was a great moment. I suppose in any era, but you had McGrath or Warne, etc. So that was pretty special. 100 in Delhi against India with Harbhajan Kumble, one of the great Indian sides. So again, that will go down as a special moment. I think all hundreds that you score for England are particularly special, but in the era that I played in, absolutely some of the bowling lineups that we were up against was pretty special. And actually, people say that to me now. They say it depends on what era you played in, can have a measure of success that you have in that era, depending on what bowling attacks are. And I have no regrets that I played in an era where some of those bowling attacks were very special, because you get a chance to do this, look back and say, well, I scored 100 against McGrath and Warne and Kumble and Harbhajan, and it's pretty special, really.
You also faced the fastest recorded delivery ever in Newlands, South Africa, in 2003, Shoaib Akhtar, the bowler. Or was it just a blur, Nick? Do you have memories of the ball? Or perhaps what happened leading up to that ball in that over, perhaps? And your interactions with Shoaib before or since? He's quite a character, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a good mate, actually. And we would have chats before that game, and we played quite a bit against each other. I think we first came across each other in sort of England A, Pakistan A, a tour of '95. So we go back a little bit. And actually, before we talk about the actual incident and the over, I'll take you even further back, actually, because I was obviously watching the World Cup part of it. He was bowling so quickly, a great rhythm. Bowling in all the games he played, he was flying through. So I said, right, I'm going to open the batting here. I normally had just a little forward press in my technique. And I thought, no, this is not going to work. Shoaib's bowling so quickly, I'm going to have to just alter that slightly. So in the nets before the game, etc., I decided I'd go back and across right onto my stumps and give myself as much chance to face whatever it was. Not, I mean, I thought it'd be somewhere around 95 plus, but that was the sort of speed he was bowling at. So I was sort of stuck right at the back of my stump, ready just to defend. And as it happened, he bowled virtually every ball in that position. He didn't really pitch one up at all. Everything was in that position. But actually, before we got to the game, I was quite a nervous batsman, so I'd like to get to the ground early, and I sort of almost took a taxi rather than the team bus, get there early, get out onto the ground, get bat in hand. So I did that in Newlands that day. So I think there was just a couple of stewards either side of me on the ground, no one, no spectators. It was about 3 hours before the game started, and there was me with my bat, just practicing out in the middle of Newlands, just practicing some shots. And the next thing I hear, and this is true story. Next thing I hear is this pitter-patter of spikes coming down from the Newlands dressing room. And it's Shoaib Akhtar. I see him from a distance. And he goes to the end of the mark, which is by the sight screen. No ball in hand, just tracksuit. And I've got my tracksuit on. And he steams in, pretending to bowl. Doesn't bowl, but runs through the action, comes down to me. And I'm just standing there. And he goes, I won't say the exact words, but he said, I'm going to bowl extremely quickly at you today. And that's exactly what he did, of course. I mean, we had a bit of a laugh. He tells the story that I said, make sure you pitch it up. I'm not sure. I can't remember that far back. I don't know if I did. But either way, it was pretty quick. But as I say, most balls were just there. And actually, the 100-mile-an-hour ball was actually in that position there. So I just sort of deflected it off. And the other problem was I couldn't get down the other end. I was desperate to get down. But Marcus Trescothick and Michael Vaughan were just not playing the game. They were just sitting on their bat handle at the non-strikers end saying, you're doing okay, pal, you carry on. So it was a great memory. And
there's quite a story there.
Yeah,
two cricketers in their civils, one without a ball, the other with a bat.
Yeah. Well, it was just odd because you can imagine the scene. If you just sort of set your scene, you've got two cricketers on the pitch with nobody else bar a couple of stewards, and we're just having a chat. And of course, what unfolded was a bit of fun after that.
Yeah. Your highest test innings, Nick, was also against Pakistan. It's 113 in Headingley, 1996. Talk us through that one.
Well, that was I mean, again, the eras that we played, I guess it's pretty much the same now, but certainly in the era I played, test cricket was just the ultimate dream for any kid growing up, to play test match cricket. So again, a bit like what I said about the one-day international, scoring 100 in my second game. I didn't have quite the start in test match cricket. I think I scored a 50 quite early on. But I was generally regarded as an opener. I opened in county cricket. And so when I first got my opportunity in test match cricket, it was an opener. But actually looking back, I think I was more suited to bat number 6. And in that test match that you're talking about, I batted number 6. It was one of the early times I batted number 6. It just gave me a bit of breathing space. Technically, I was at times I struggled, and it just took away the new ball a little bit. So I batted number 6 in that game, and I think I was 50-odd not out overnight and managed to complete my 100, a square cut against Wasim Akram down to the old pavilion at Headingley. Just the most amazing moment. Just looking back now, and to think, I'm disappointed I didn't score more test hundreds, but to say you scored one was a pretty special moment against one of the great attacks. You had Waqar steaming in from one end, you had Wasim Akram, you had Saklang Mushtaq, you had Lil Mushi bowling, Mushtaq Ahmed. So you had trials against the seamers, the reverse swing, the spin, the leg spin. You had it all. And so, yeah, it was incredibly special to get 100 in that game.
Nick, you're also acknowledged as a world-class fielder, whether at third slip, the gully, or short mid-wicket, or maybe even as a cover sweeper. Did you train as hard as the boys do these days? I mean, current cricketers, or is it just great instinct? I mean, Sunny Gavaskar keeps talking about how in the 80s, at least, when he was playing, it used to be like, a couple of nice, sweet little jogs around the park, and you're ready to go. But things changed in the 90s and the 2000s when you were playing. But did you train as hard as the boys do these days?
Yeah, I'm not, do you know what? I'll say it quietly. I don't think we did, but what we did was feel that we did train incredibly hard, because everything evolves, doesn't it? And so we trained harder than the era before us, and they probably trained harder than our era. But see, I caught the end of Graham Gooch's philosophy. I mean, Graham was a great hero of mine. I opened batting with him once, not for England. He was the era before me, but for Essex. And he really sort of engendered the physical nature of the game. So training, physical training helped mental training, etc., etc. So I just caught the end of that. And so I was influenced by that massively. And so my preparation for games was very much the physical side, gym work, training, stamina. And I think that had a huge impact on my fielding, without doubt, because I was an athlete. You know, in those days, I say it, in those days, I was an athlete. And therefore, if you've got good movement and you can move, whether it be slips or in the covers, you had a chance of being a good athlete. You had a chance of being a good fielder. And so had I played in a different era, I don't know whether I would have been quite as good a fielder because of those reasons that I said. I had a decent eye. I love fielding in the slips. And I was a decent slip fielder, yeah.
Memorable catches at the international level. You remember any of them?
I remember pretty much all the slip catches because I remember my first test match actually against the West Indies in '95, and we fielded first, thankfully, because I was quite a nervous type of player, and it actually suited me. I think we lost the toss up at Old Trafford, and West Indies batted, and it just gave me a chance to get in the game. And I think I caught Courtney Walsh right at the end of the innings up here. I used to catch slightly differently to most people as well, Hrishi. I caught everything in my right hand, apart from the odd time when you had to dive to your left. But when I caught with two hands, everything went in my right hand. So I sort of looked slightly odd and sort of obscure, but I used to catch everything like this. So when Courtney Walsh, I got one in there. I think that was the second one. I got one before that. And when you get a good slip catch, everyone pats you on the back, and you feel part of the game. You feel like you're contributing, and in a sort of silly way, you feel that was a good time for me then to go and bat. I mean, I didn't score massively. I batted for an hour and a half in my first test match, but I felt that the catching had got something to do with that, because I felt like I'd participated in the game up until the point when that was the sort of my main theme was batting. So yeah, catches were, again, you without bowling a ball in international cricket, where if you're not going to do that, you want to contribute, and that was my way of contributing.
1996 was really an eventful year for you, wasn't it, Nick? There was also the tied test match against Zimbabwe in December, around about Christmas time. David Lloyd, the English coach's comment, I'd like you to repeat that, even if you can't do David's accent.
Sorry about murdered them, I think. Something like that, wasn't it? Yeah.
Flip them over, murdered them.
I look back at that game, and people will say I played some people might say I played a good hand, a good innings.
Yeah, it was for those of you who don't know, 96 against Zimbabwe. The game was tied. Also a game that was really controversial because of Zimbabwe's bowling tactics. A lot of it negative, isn't it? Outside the off stump, right, Nick? Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened was we were I can't remember what the run chase was, but it was looking unlikely. The game was sort of meandering. It didn't look like we were going to be able to chase it down. In the end, we had a go. I got off to a flying start. So we looked at each other and thought, well, come on, we'll have a crack at this. And we expected, we were probably favourites going. They had a good side, Zimbabwe, certainly. But we probably felt, yeah, we should have a go at it. Anyway, we got in a position where we could have a go at it. And then Paul Strang, the leg spinner, was bowling, and I just could not get him away. I just could not find the boundary frequently enough. And so the rate just started to climb a little bit, and then it's getting towards the end of the game. And then Streak decided that he was going to come back on. I can't remember if he was captain, but he was obviously the senior bowler. And the game was just moving away from them at that point. So he decided he was going to bowl, and it was within the game. It was within the rules and regs and the laws of the game. He was bowling sort of, I don't know, miles outside off stump one ball, miles outside leg stump the next ball. So I was this sort of sitting target thinking, well, I know it's not going to be straight. It's either going to be somewhere over there or it's going to be somewhere over there. So I had little chance of getting any power, so in the end I had to guess a little bit, sort of almost like it's going to be that, and probably fire it that way. So what I decided to do in the end was try and cut the angle down by standing outside my crease and running at him, just so, because there's only so much, you can't fire it too far wide if I'm 4 foot down the crease. So that had a measure of success. I managed to clip a 1 for 6. But where I say I lost it was a game we should have won. I should have won that game for England. I mean, I got man of the match. Everyone sort of clapped and said we got 96 and well done. It was a great run chase, and you should have, it was a tied test match, etc., etc. I sit here now. I should have won. I let the team down. I should have won that game. I'd batted all that period of time. I'd done everything I could to get us in a position. I couldn't get Paul Strang away. And then Streaky came in and did that at the end. I'd been in long enough to win the game. So I have slightly different feelings on it than perhaps other people would look at it. I feel I let people down. I should have done better.
Where you live, you learn. You captained your county, Warwickshire, and there was a county championship win in 2004 under your captaincy. That must have been really special. I'd like you to recount memories, salient features, important moments. And if I'm not mistaken, in that season came that mammoth 303 not out, playing for Warwick's against Middlesex. This was Lords. And if I've got my stats right, one out of only 5 people at the time to score a triple hundred at Lords. So it's really a once in a lifetime achievement, isn't it? So that season and that 303, please.
Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the highest score by a left-hander at Lords. That's what I keep being told. I've not even looked at the stats, but that of course was a special moment in a special season. If I'm honest with you, I didn't think we deserved to win the county championship at the start of the year because I wasn't thinking about the county championship. We had a group of very good young players, but that was it. I didn't think we would compete with some of the stronger sides who had more experienced players, etc. I was thinking this is a year where we can develop some of these younger players, help them get a little bit better, and perhaps in a few years' time, when I'm long gone and I'm finished. I mean, I was right at the end of my career there. I was only playing for another couple of years. So it was really trying to set up the club as best I could for some of these youngsters to prosper in the next couple of years. So all of a sudden, what we decided to do, we didn't get that many wins, but we didn't have a great side. So we did as well as we possibly could. So what we decided to do was, if we're not in a position to win the game, which we often weren't, because we weren't a great side, we're not going to lose it. And there's a fine line there. It didn't mean we set out on day one not to win and not to lose, rather. And that means that we're just going to block everything and play negative. No. There were 5 occasions when we got in a position to win the game, and we won all 5. And there were, 10 times when we weren't, and we didn't lose any of them. And so therefore, what we engendered was a bit more, we got a bit tougher as cricketers. We got a bit tougher, mentally tougher. And in the end, all the points that we accrued meant we got more points than anybody else. But were we the best side? I'm not so sure we were the best side. I mean, it proved to be the best because we had more points than anyone else. But were we the most talented side? No, we weren't. But we did a lot right. We got a lot right with the cricketers that we had available to pick from. We did about as well as we could. And for me, looking back, that's the best I could do as captain, was to help some of these young cricketers just toughen up a little bit. It was the emergence of someone like Jonathan Trott, of course, went on to have a really good, fine international career. Young Ian Bell was just starting to emerge from being a young cricketer, starting to make his way in first-class cricket. So those 2 in particular had good seasons. We had Brad Hogg, the Australian, who came in and batted well, didn't get that many wickets. So we had quality players. We had a lot of youngsters. And that, in the end, we managed to gel a team together that won the county championship.
And the 303? Whoa.
303. Well, yeah, I mean, for anyone that's been to Lords or watched cricket at Lords or played cricket at Lords, Lords is generally a pretty flat wicket. And I can tell you on that occasion, it was particularly flat. So it was a good toss to win. I remember it's funny, I remember being 179 not out overnight. Nancy Hayward, the South African bowler, who's bowling quite quick in those days, he hit me right on the end of day one, right here, just on that little bit there. And I sort of defended it down. And I remember thinking, that's hurt. And I've got like poppadom fingers. I've not got very strong bones at all. They break very quickly. They break in half. And this time I was like, yeah, that's not good. I think I might have done something here. So I went in 179 not out, and all night that night I was doing the hot cold treatment. So I didn't sleep a wink, but I was sort of putting my hand in hot water, then cold water, just trying to make sure that I got something to play with, and then next day I got some strength in it. And I suspected I'd broken it, but I didn't know. So I went out, didn't say anything, managed to get 303. And more importantly than that, we managed to win the game right at the end of the last day 4. I think we made them follow on and we bowled them out and we just won the game. So it was a sort of double edge for me, getting the runs, but also being captain, making sure we won. But that was it really. I had a month off after that because I went and had an x-ray and it was completely smashed in here. So I managed to get the 303 somehow, but it's amazing what adrenaline can do for you.
Correct. Nick Knight is here because he's part of the panel for the Border Gavaskar Trophy, the INDvsAUS Australia Tour of Australia. First test broadcast timings, of course, 8:30 a.m. onwards, Indian Standard Time. And if you're interested in catching the second test, which is the Boxing Day test, that's 26 December, 5 a.m. onwards. On Sony 6, you get the English, Tamil and Telugu broadcast. Sony 10.1, you get the English broadcast, and Sony 10.3, you get the Hindi broadcast. And Nick, want to come to your broadcasting career? Some quality time spent at Sky Sports, great broadcasters. You've been part of the team in so many games. Any important ones you remember? Unforgettable stuff sitting in the commentator's box or the anchor studio?
Gosh, there's so many. I've been so lucky. I mean, I've done the job for 13 or 14 years, ever since I finished playing. I guess when you ask that question, I'm thinking, was it 2016 when England lost the final of the World T20 when Brathwaite hit 4 sixes? I was there for that. So that was it wasn't a great memory for an Englishman, but it was a great game, a great finish, a great tournament. It just had a very special feel, the whole tournament. So that was. I think as a broadcaster, you love the cricket that you see in front of you, but you also love the occasion, like you did as a player. You love the occasion. So when you come broadcast in India with the atmosphere at the grounds, Calcutta, Eden Gardens, you've got 100,000 people. You're sat there with the mic, and you feel what it's like because you were there as a player. But you feel the energy, you feel the event, you feel the occasion. And I think that helps you with your job, but also if you're like me, I absolutely love cricket. I mean, I am a complete cricket nuffy. I sit and listen to cricket, watch cricket, follow cricketers all the time. It's my life. It's what I love. And so if you're lucky enough to have the mic in hand and be at these grounds, I mean, you're so lucky. I'm so lucky. So from that perspective, many of those games in England, some of the matches we've seen, England, of course, have become an exceptional side now in one-day cricket, but they've been a good side for a little while now. So following them and some of the successes they've had has been unbelievable. 2012, England were an outstanding test match side. They had some outstanding players, Petersons, the Strauss, the Cook, the Trotts, all these guys that were leading England to the top of the world. So some of those memories, yeah, I mean, there you go. I mean, just to be able to commentate and be a part of some of those memories is very special.
And being here in India for the INDvsAUS series, that must be special with the Aussie legend Glenn McGrath in studio.
Do you know what? I'll let you know about that at the end of the tour. I've only been here for a few days, and I've had dinner with him a few times, and it's amazing. It's again one of the beauties of the job we do. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many times I played against Australia, probably 25, 30, I don't know. I reckon he got the better of me on 29 occasions out of the 30. I had him once. I got him at Melbourne when I stayed leg side of the ball, managed to get him through the offside. And I reckon that's the only time in 30 games where I can sort of tick it and say, yeah, I beat you today. But all those other occasions, he got me. And we were talking about that the other night, actually, over dinner. So, and what you do when you have a job like this, and you're lucky enough to have a job like this, is spend time socially with people who you perhaps wouldn't have spent time with. I mean, you've got to go back to our era. I think the game's a lot more friendly now than it was when we played. So, yeah, sure, when we played at the SCG against Australia and Glenn McGrath got you out for the 29th time, you'd still go and have a beer in the dressing rooms after the series or after the game. But that was the extent of it. We didn't play World Series games around the world in IPLs and whatever at Big Bash. We weren't, that world didn't exist when we played. So the familiarity between myself and, say, someone like Glenn McGrath was on the pitch. That was it. And he'd mutter away and give you a few words, and you'd play and miss, and he'd come down and mutter away again. And we now have a laugh about that. So we're now talking about that now over the last 20 years, 30 years, whatever it was. But we never got a chance to talk about that at the time because we didn't know each other socially. So now we know each other a bit better socially. So it's one of the benefits of being able to get to know people that perhaps you didn't see that side of them that you did when you're on the pitch.
When you're in India, and you're going to be asked this a lot, but your favorite Indian players over the sands of time and your current favorite Indian players. So just look back over your shoulder and you know what you see now. People you've really been impressed by.
I mean, a little bit like I alluded to earlier, I was incredibly lucky. Sachin obviously was coming through at that point. And you had Rahul Dravid. I mean, my first A tour was 94. So in that A tour, England A versus India, you had Ganguly, Dravid, Laxman.
Wow.
So it was really the first time that someone of my ability, which was limited, very limited when you compare it to, say, Ganguly drive. So you go on that tour and you think you're doing okay, and you come to play in Indian conditions, and I'd never played in India before, and you've got Dravid, Ganguly, Laxman smashing it everywhere, and you start thinking, I've got a long way to go, by the way, until I become half decent, because these guys are so much better than me. And they ended up being so much better than me. But that was the first time, really, that I'd seen players of that quality, you know, on an international A tour. And obviously you follow it and you play against them in the years to come. So they'd be special players that I would have followed. Srinath was someone I admired. Fast bowling in India at that time wasn't that, you know, it's not what it was now.
Sure.
Not what it absolutely. I mean, you got 3 or 4, 5, 6. They're queuing up now in India. But it was Javagal Srinath opened the bowling with Venkatesh Prasad.
Yes.
that was it. Pretty
Sweet
much.
Bangaloreans.
But Srini was like the kind of figurehead. You know, he was the sort of the go-to bowler. And I remember playing it. I hope you don't mind me going off on one here, but I played against him at Calcutta, Eden Gardens, and for an English guy to play in Calcutta with 100,000 people was almost like the dream of cricket. That was it. You know, you play at the MCG, or you can play at the SCG, or play around the world, but to play in front of 100,000 people in Calcutta was just something you just tick off. So we won the toss. Myself and Marcus Trescothick went out to bat. Marcus got a single, or whatever he did. I was on strike. Javagal was running in, and he used to bowl these sort of big in-swingers to the left-hander. So this was in the day pre-DRS, of course. So that, decisions were decisions, and you walk off. And I played this down the line, missed it. It pitched, honestly, no joke, pitched that far outside. If I can extend that, it took that far outside leg stump, LBW out. First ball. 100,000 people, the dream of playing in, and I didn't get a run. Not one run. And I was out first ball. And to make it worse, you can imagine, you go back to the old dressing rooms, which is I think they're still the same there now. You go underneath and round. And I sat there taking my pads off, and the replay was up above me, and I just kept seeing the replay, and it was that far. In one moment, I can't remember who the umpire was, but I was like so frustrated. But anyway, yeah. So I've got some fond memories of playing against India. Got 100 against them. Luckily, played a Test match or 2 against them. Sachin managed to go from 94 to 100 at Edgbaston with a 6 off Min Patel. So it's an easy game for him. I mean, just unbelievable. I remember fielding it slip many times to Sachin and to good Ganguly and to Laxman, and particularly in this part of the world here, you stand at slip and you may as well go to sleep because the ball's not coming. The ball's not coming to you. I mean, whether it's Darren Goff, Andy Caddick, Dominic Court, Mark Angus Fraser, doesn't matter who it is, however good the bowler is, it's not coming my way. So I may as well not be there. And I don't think I ever got a catch at slip in India because they don't nick it. I mean, it's just irrelevant. But you have to have someone there because you got to. But so that was great. Indian current players, I am a huge fan of Shubman Gill. I saw him play for the first time in the Junior World Cup a couple of years ago, and that was, of course, when he opened. I don't think he opened. I think he came in at 3. Prithvi Shaw opened the batting. So I saw him play a few times there, and I instantly became a huge fan. I love the way he lines up technically. Alignment's excellent. Temperament clearly is very good because he scores big runs when he gets a chance. I think he's going to be a superstar of the future. I hope he gets a chance in this Test match series. He might do. I don't know which way the selector's going to go. But I see him as being a huge star.
Now, the current series is going to be a tough one for both teams, and it's a nice segue to get into the batting. Virat Kohli is going back, Nick, after the first pink ball test on paternity leave. Rohit Sharma is only going to be available for the 3rd test, which is Sydney. So who are you looking at amongst the other India batters to come in and do the job?
That's a good question. If it was me sat here right now with the day to go, I would go Mayank Agarwal, who I worked on the series here 2 years ago, and he really impressed me. I hadn't seen much of him beforehand. I just loved the way he burst on the scene and just took the game of Test match cricket like, there's us faffing around trying to make the best we can. Here's a guy who just announced himself in Test match cricket. I'm like, wow, okay. And he's clearly gone on from strength to strength, so I like him. I think I would go him and Shubman Gill to open. I know it's a bit tough on Shubman Gill in terms of, against an Australian attack in Australian conditions. You are perhaps making him a little bit vulnerable. But I think he's a good player. I think he'll cope. You could go KL Rahul. I think I would probably go those two. Pujara obviously at 3, Kohli at 4, Rahane at 5. I like Vihari. I saw him a little bit. I saw him in the warm-up games, and then I'd probably go Pant at 7, and then your bowlers probably Umesh with the others, with Ashwin and Shami and Bumrah. So that's probably the way I would go. But again, Prithvi Shaw is an interesting one. I still like the way he plays. I would go Shubman Gill ahead of him because I think he's going to be a better player. But that's not to say that Prithvi Shaw is not going to be a very good player himself. I mean, clearly he is a very good player. I think he averages 55 in a handful of test matches. So the problem for the selectors there is, do you stick with someone who's got an average of, a decent average and playing well, but perhaps missed a chance to really impress in the warm-up games? I don't know. That's their choice. As I say, I keep going back. I would go Shubman Gill.
Nick, Shami, Bumrah and Yadav are almost a certainty for India if you look at the bowling. Would you play 2 spinners, R. Ashwin and Kuldeep Yadav? Or are you just going to say 4 seamers in Australian conditions and either Ashwin or Kuldeep?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer without seeing the pitch. I mean, I've played at Adelaide. It's a day-night match, so you're starting to think more towards the seamers than the spinners. I just looked actually before half an hour ago. I was looking at some stats, and I think the seamers record is so much better in day-night cricket at Adelaide. So with that bearing that in mind, I'd be pushing my sort of thoughts more towards having the seamers and perhaps just 1 spinner. Again, I'm a big fan of Ashwin. I've seen him bowl very well to English sides over the years. I would probably edge towards Ashwin and play Umesh and Shami and Bumrah. That's probably how I would line up. But we might get there and come on air on Thursday morning and there's no grass on the pitch, and you might be thinking differently. But I suspect that's not going to be the case. And if it's as we suspect, I would probably go with seamers and probably have the spinner.
Australia's opening combination, Nick. I mean, Warner's injured. Pukovsky's had another knock on the head. Who are you looking to be as the likely opening combination with those blokes not being around?
Again, that's a real tough one. My instant thoughts were more towards Marnus Labuschagne. I was thinking, well, if he bats 3 and has done it pretty well, why can't you just slot him into the opening role and then just sort of feed it down from there? I think a lot of it depends on Cameron Green, who's got a concussion issue. If he's fit, then that maybe changes my mind a little bit. I'm just concerned that if I put Marnus Labuschagne up to the top, just whether there's enough firepower in the middle overs.
They have called up Marcus Harris. So you're saying with Marcus Harris.
I'm a bit worried about Joe Burns because he's not scored any runs, and I see him playing the warm-up games, and I'm thinking, I don't know where his confidence levels are right now. So I'm thinking Marcus Harris, absolutely. He's setting up okay. He's played Test cricket before. He might be someone I'd pick, probably. It's just whether if I don't go Marnus Labuschagne, I mean, they're talking in the press about Wade, but I don't think he's in. I think he's not even opened in first-class cricket. I mean, to suddenly put him into a Test match against Bumrah, Shami, Yadav on a pitch that might do a little bit under lights, that's a tough ask. So I think when it comes down to it, I've got to find an opener from somewhere, but I probably would stick Labuschagne in the middle. I'd probably keep him at 3 or 4, depending where Smith wants to go, and then have Travis Head at 5. And then hopefully, if Cameron Green's fit, I'll probably slot him in at 6, and then you can go from there with Payne and India bowlers and Nathan Lyon. But it's a real problem for them to get some stability at the top. But I probably would go Marcus Harris and another.
Interesting. Cameron Green, impressive performance in the warm-up game against India. Everybody's raving about him. Nick, what do you make of the lad?
To be honest, I haven't seen a huge amount of him. What I have seen, I'm impressed like everybody else. He looks strong. He looks like he can bowl for long periods of time. He's got very strong action, gets it through, strong batting. So, I mean, any side that can produce an all-rounder to bat at number 6, like England have done now for quite some time with Ben Stokes, it helps with balance of side, etc. I hope he's okay, because I'd love to see him play. When you see a young kid come through, burst onto international scene, you just want to see him have a go, and you want to see how they're going to go, and you want to see him against the best sides in the world.
Sure.
And India will be a great challenge for him. Ashwin against him, we won't have seen too much if Ashwin plays. The expectation level is very different. And all of a sudden, when you're a little bit like I was saying at the start with our discussion, I don't think many people would have had a huge expectation when I first started. I was just a player out of county cricket doing what other people had done. I wasn't someone who burst onto the scene and suddenly, oh my God, how's he going to go? We're really expecting great things, and that just builds a little bit of pressure on you and how you're going to cope with that. So that'll be something slightly different for him to deal with. We don't know how he'll do that, but one thing is for sure, he's a huge talent.
It's never easy playing Australia anywhere, leave alone playing Australia in Australia.
Yeah.
How did you personally deal with the pressure tactics, the sledging in particular, whilst playing against Oz? Did you give some of it back, Nick, or did you just stay very still and calm? Or did you go the Sachin way or the Kohli way? In India, you say the Sachin way or the Kohli way.
I think if I'd have been as good as Virat Kohli, I'd have been pretty happy to give plenty back. But when you had the mindset that I had, and I'm not belittling myself, but I was, I was just trying to make my way in international cricket and do the best I can. I wasn't this sort of standout figure that everyone was paying $20 to go and watch. I was someone who was just trying to do my job, do it as well as I possibly could, get the runs, get the satisfaction from your team winning. And that way around. I wasn't sort of one of these iconic figures, and I didn't feel comfortable. My character didn't allow me. Glenn McGrath was muttering away. I'm just keeping quiet. I'm walking away. I'm keeping quiet and let the bat do the talking. And that was my character. And that's how I would deal with it.
Enough.
Now there are other players who would kind of enjoy that and give plenty back, and that was what got them going. And that was almost what they needed to really get the best out of themselves. For me to get the best out of myself, I'll just quietly chip away. And if Glenn McGrath bowls a short wide one, I'll hit you for 4. If Glenn McGrath bowls one on my hip, I'll hit you for 4. If he bowls a good ball, I'll either nick it or play and miss. And that's my level. That's where I'm at. And so I'll just keep churning away and doing what I do best and give myself the best chance. I wouldn't be giving myself the best chance if I was waiting for Glenn McGrath to chip away at me and then me fight back, because I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. And I think you kind of find your level.
Your favorite cricket commentators or broadcasters of all time, or from around the world, who you've admired in the past, continue to admire if they're still active, would you name them?
I mean, I was from an era when I played the Richie Benos.
Wow.
Ian Chappell, many of the Channel 9 commentators from that era were terrific to listen to. So, I kind of grew up. That was my staple diet as a player. So when I'm watching cricket at that age, I'm listening to those guys. I thought they were unbelievable. I thought they added so much to the event. Modern day, I mean, we've got some terrific commentators in the modern game now. I mean, in all countries. I mean, we were lucky enough to work alongside Ian Smith from New Zealand, of course, when he commentated in the last rites of that World Cup win for England. I mean, they've become iconic moments, really, where you're going to struggle as a commentator to add to a moment like the winning runs in a World Cup. But Ian Smith did that, absolutely did that, and it just became, obviously the moment was that, can they get back for 2? But the way Ian Smith described that was just phenomenal. And I've always, I know him pretty well as a bloke. He's a fantastic guy as well. We've got some terrific commentators back at home as well. Here in India, everyone brings something slightly different to what they do. But it's a great art that I think you're always learning, and you're always trying to understand how other people do it and perhaps what they do well and how we can add to your game, like you do as a player. You're constantly traveling down the escalator or up the escalator, and you're always trying to add little bits to it and subtract bits that don't work. And so, yeah, it's a great game.
Your thoughts on the concussion sub rule? I mean, the like for love, sub controversy in the India Australia T20 series. The Aussies didn't think Chahal was a like for Jadeja. Your thoughts, and can we modify this rule? What are your thoughts, Nick? I mean, some people are even saying let's go back to the super sub of 2003, 2004. Something we tried for a couple of years in the game and then just gave up on it. So, your thoughts on the concussion sub?
I'm not against it. I mean, with all these new regulations and laws, unfortunately, there's always going to be instances where you think, oh, do you know what, does that fit? And your example there earlier, does that quite work? Is that fair? As I said, there's always going to be those incidents, but I quite like it. As I say, I think, I think the way the game is now, it's very different. In fact, Glenn and I were talking about this the other night. When we played, I got hit, I don't know how many times on the helmet, and all we did was just brush yourself down and take your helmet off, and the physio would run on with another helmet. That was a bit of a protocol. Once your helmet got hit, then you get another one, and you carry on, and therefore it doesn't become the talking point at the end of a game because you carry on. Now, I'm not saying we should have carried on. I'm not saying I agree now with the game as it is now. I think is in a better place for what's happening than it was when we play. But so I do agree with the laws. I do agree with the way the game is going, and it's become much more of an issue than it was years and years ago. Which, I mean, in the rugby world now, we're finding early signs of dementia, etc. With all the things that are going on, those guys will have done what we did, probably just get a hit and knock yourself around, shake yourself about, and carry on. Now clearly that's not not great, and hopefully and cricket, we probably had, you're not comparing the same hits at all, but a lot of us would have got hits many times, but because it wasn't the talking point, as I say, at the end of the game, perhaps it wasn't addressed like it needed to be, and perhaps it wasn't addressed like it's being now. So in a long-winded way, yeah, I think the game is going in the right direction, and these things should be encouraged.
And you literally saw the evolution of the switch hit, courtesy KP.
Yeah.
What do you think of the switch hit? I mean, a lot of people are saying, let's outlaw it. How can this happen? If bowlers are allowed only one over the shoulder, how can batsmen be allowed to innovate like this? Your thoughts on that, Nick?
I have some, as a former batsman, I say this quietly, but I do have some sympathy with the bowlers. I mean, when you look at the game, for me, and hopefully we're going to have this in the next 5 days in Adelaide, I want to see a contest. I want to see a contest between bat and ball. And that's my slight concern with one-day cricket, actually, whilst we're on that. I think that the move to 2 white balls has been slightly counterproductive, in the sense that I think the reason that it was first brought back in was to try and help the bowlers. So try and redress the balance a little bit. Actually, it's gone the other way. It's helped the batsmen. So I think we should go back to one white ball. The ball get a bit older, and ironically, I think that will help the bowlers at the back end of the game, because we need a contest. It's great to see 400s. It's great to see batsmen smashing 4s and 6s. But I love the game of cricket, and I want to see something for the bowlers as well. It might be reverse swing. It might be a little bit more seam movement. And so my fear is the switch hit I loved. I mean, I played the reverse sweeps a lot when I played, and it's the same theory. You've got a field set for a right-hander, you become a left-hander, or whichever way around you go, and it's tough on the bowler. He's bowling for you to play as a left-hander, and suddenly you switch. The switch hit is great to watch. I just want to see bowlers have a little bit more in their favour, and I agree totally with people that fear for the bowlers in this instance. I mean, if batsmen are allowed to change, why can't bowlers?
Well, my last question is more a lifestyle question. In your downtime away from the game as a broadcaster, do you enjoy playing any other sport or listening to music, for example? What's on your phone, your passion areas, Nick?
I'm by my own admittance, I'm an incredibly simple chap. I don't we've got a bit of land at home, and we go out to my family, young family, and we go out and I'm just happy to look after the grounds and cut the grass and get on the mowers and do stuff like that. I just want to be outside. I'm a country lad. I'm not a city boy. I don't need to be at restaurants every night. I don't need to be going to the cinema. I don't need necessarily socializing all the time. I'm a quiet lad. I like to get out in the countryside and enjoy being outside. So, sit me on a mower and cut grass all day. I'm as happy as Larry. Okay, I know it's really boring. I know it's really dull, but it kind of works for me.
Yeah, Glenn McGrath says that about himself. He says he's a boy from the bush.
Yeah, we've had a few chats about that over dinner. We've got something in common. Yeah, we're more than happy getting outside and getting on with it.
Well, what about music? Do you like your rock and roll? Do you like your
No.
pop? Yeah.
Not really. I don't. I just put the radio on and I'll listen to anything. I mean, that's how dull. That's how dull it is. I mean, we've got these lovely rooms here we're staying in, and I barely have the telly on. Let alone music. So yeah, I don't necessarily need all the sort of mod cons and music and TV, but hey, I'm a simple lad.
Nick Knight, we really enjoyed all the entertainment you gave us on the pitch in your playing days. We certainly are enjoying all your incredible broadcasting. You definitely are one of the best in the world, and it's wonderful that we have you to listen to watch in the India-Australia series. Have yourself a good one, and hope to speak to you soon. Cheers. Have a safe and healthy Christmas. Merry Christmas. Yes.
Yes, it'll be slightly different this year, but thank you very much. Happy Christmas to you.
Take care.